Good afternoon, good weekend, honors sixth graders. I hope you have a safe and enjoyable weekend. Hopefully it warms up a little bit. Today we're talking about multiplication of real numbers, chapter 2.5. So the multiplication rule. The product of two real numbers with the same sign is the product of their absolute values. So the product of two real numbers with the same sign is the product of their absolute values. So what that is saying is if you either have 8 times 8, okay, the product is their absolute value. Even if you have negative 8 times negative 8, we know that negative 8 times negative 8 equals 64. So no matter what, if you have two real numbers, 2 is the key word there, 2, it's an even number, and we'll get more into that as the year goes on in algebra, but 2, since an even number of negative numbers, we know that no matter what in multiplication, our answer will be positive. So the product of two real numbers with different sign is the opposite of the product of their absolute value. So if we did, 8 times negative 8, we know the answer is 64, but it's the opposite of their absolute value product, so it is negative 64. Opposites coming back in since chapter 2.1, the word opposite, dealing with the real number line. So even if we had negative 8 times 8, we have one negative, okay? The product of two real numbers with different signs. We have different signs here. Okay, so their product is 64, but it's the opposite of their absolute value, which is negative 64. So let's look at some of the examples we have here. First thing I notice, let's look at number 1 here. The first thing I notice here, negative 3 times 4 times negative 2, is I notice that there's an even number of negative signs. Okay, so we have one right here and one right here. So even number of negative signs. So I can tell myself that this problem here, even though we have 3 real numbers, we have 2 numbers that are negative. Okay, so we know those 2 negatives are going to make a positive. So we know that we can just do order of operations here just from left to right. We get negative 12 times negative 2, which is a positive 24. Okay. Now this is supposed to be down here, negative 1, I'm sorry, to the 4th power. So what does that mean? Well, it means negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. That's a 4, sorry. That's a 4 again. Negative 1. So negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. So negative 1 times negative 1 is a positive 1. Times negative 1 equals a negative 1. Times another negative 1 equals a positive 1. Again, going back here, it's an even number. So if we have an even number of negative signs, we will automatically have a positive solution because they will cancel out with each other. So here we have negative 0.5, negative 2, and negative 3. So look at, first thing I notice is that there's 3 negative signs. That's an odd number. So automatically I know my answer will be negative. So we could just go straight across, however you may want to solve this. So negative 0.5 times negative 2 is a positive 1. And then positive 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. Our solution is negative 3. So when you get a problem, I would automatically look at how many signs, how many negative signs there are. If it's an even number, our answer will remain positive. If it's an odd number, of negative signs, our answer will be negative. So, evaluating a variable expression. So number 1 up here, we know that -4 times -1 times a negative of a -5. So how many negative signs do we have? We have 4 now. Okay, so automatically the first thing I would do is what we did in class today, is we focused on turning this into a plus, okay, because the 2 negatives right here will make this a plus right here. So let me do that again here. Alright, so let's focus on the left side to right. So let's do -4 times -1 is 4. We know that negative of a -5 is 5. So we know 4 times 5 is 20. Okay, so we had 4 negative signs that turned into a positive number because there's an even number of negative signs. So here, plug it in, 9.7 negative times, remember I talked about maybe a little star, that means multiplication. So times x, which is -5, times the -2. So we have 3 negative signs in our problem. So we know that our answer is going to be negative. And -9.7 times -5. We know it's -48.5. And times that. Whoops. Sorry, hold on, I made a mistake there. When you do a negative times a negative here, that is a positive to start out. Then you multiply that by -2. So you get what I would do here is multiply by 2, so you get 0. So you get 97.0 here, and it's a negative. There's a negative on the 2. It's an odd number of negatives right there, so it's -97.0. So here, all it's asking you to do is write an expression. Okay, we're not solving anything. I'm not giving you what n equals, so we're just going to write out what this truly means. So we know that it is 3 times, well, there's 3 number n's, but we got to make sure that it's going to remain negative. Okay, and that's because it's an odd number of them. Okay, so 3 times the parentheses -n cubed. Alright, so that's how you would write that with that exponent there. Alright, here's your homework. Okay. If you have any questions this weekend, please let me know. Make sure you finish that worksheet. I'll hand the test back for those who turned them in on Monday, so we can come up with a day for you to remake those up. More than likely it'll be during lunch. But anyways, these are the 3 problems that we will discuss on Monday along with the worksheet that I gave you. Alright, I hope you have a safe and a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you on Monday. Go Lions!